Duncan Dunkino.
Mwafrika ya Afrika, mimi ni Mobutu ya Zaire. Mimi hapa napenda Yuda moto mobaya oh. Yuda moto mobaya oh. Yuda moto mobaya oh. Mimi ni Mwafrika ya Afrika. Mimi ni Mobutu ya Zaire. Mimi hapa napenda Yuda moto mobaya oh. Yuda moto mobaya oh. Yuda moto mobaya oh.
True expression of African music. So revitalizing. We're talking years, decades of this one, but sounds so refreshing. So Juwon is sitting there, really amazed about, about this music. Is that so? And where are you at this moment?
Well, it takes me back. It takes me back to my teenage years and, like, you know, music we used to hear then. So yeah, it's very nostalgic. Yes.
Well, that's where you are, Nostalgic Station. Can I just play one more nostalgia for you?
Oh yes.
I'm sure you will, because I showed you the album. I mean, this one is taken from the Afro Rock album, Kona Records. It's a collection of rare on release, African Afrobeat, and Afro funk and all the beats that you would not normally associate with. A really solid album. Let me play you one from a man from Sierra Leone. Geraldo Pino and the Heartbeat. This track, indeed, as it says, heavy, heavy, heavy.
Hey, she's hip. Heavy, heavy, heavy.
When you listen to Geraldo Pino, of all of his music, this is not the one that most Sierra Leonean will recognize. And I'll tell you what, rare.
We've got a brand new girl in town. The way she walks, the way she talks, the way she does the funky dances. She's really, really heavy. My woman, she's really, really heavy. Look at her go. Take it out. Get down. Heavy, heavy, heavy. 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 Get down, you people. We've got a brand new girl in town. The way she walks, the way she talks, the way she does the funky dances. She's really, really heavy. My woman. Everybody, come on. Heavy, heavy, heavy.
Indeed. In Sierra Leone, people know him as Geraldo Pino, but in Nigeria, he's like James Brown.
Heavy,
A rare version, a rare copy you can find, you'll ever find of Geraldo Pina. I tell you what, thank you to James Imgrant, and he's gonna be presenting me with S.C. Rogers, album. This was something that was put together on vinyls, and very, very rare copy, and I'm so grateful. I haven't received it yet, but I thank you very much, James. I'm sure you will be here very soon to talk about your music and a lot more experience, what you've learned from S.C. Rogers. So we've had some big guns from Sierra Leone, but here tonight is another big gun here in terms of the British music, African music. He has represented the classical side of it and the Afro section. And it seems as if the more we grow older, especially in the West, as someone from the continent, or it depends on where you're born, but the more you grow older in somebody else's land, the more you turn that feeling to return home. It's that sort of feeling. It's always been there, isn't it? Always been there. And my special guest today, Juwon Ogungbe, has taken that path, pilgrimage, back to a place, that his parents are from, a place that is so famous in Nigeria, Abeokuta. And he's going to tell us a lot more about his new project. But before then, for those of you who is the first time hearing his music and what is the man himself, Juwon Ogungbe, let us take you back to, this was an album that he produced and released, I'm not sure, it's about 10 years now. Is that right?
Yes, 10 years ago.
And he's been doing a lot of stuff, but let's just take you back to an African setting. And each time he tells this story, it feels like so new. I'm giggling like a little child.
Right.
But
Okay. I know which one it's going to be now.
well, it's called A Taste of Pepper. I'm not sure if I could force him to tell it again, but each time it's so new. Here is Juwon Ogungbe with A Taste of Pepper. Hear that classical Afro deep voice.
My grandmama said you must take some pepper every day. Make una man know they want us. And the salt is the sweet for us. And the food they do good things for body. If I come to visit and you give me rabbit food, I guess I'll know. I might taste a little so you won't say I was rude. And I don't even know. For you see, I eat my greens, but I don't like morning. That is why I know. My grandma told me, grandson, you should never let a whole day go by without a taste of pepper. Means whenever you feel better. So I followed your advice, and I can safely say, a taste of pepper keeps me in perfect health. A taste of pepper, good health will bring me up. A taste of pepper keeps me in perfect health. A taste of pepper, good health will bring me up. A taste of pepper.
I tell you what, even himself, I don't know what he's thinking about. I mean, apart from the lyrics, this music, I mean, you need to buy the album. It's available on Tidal and other stores as well. Life Force Music, that's the title of the album. But there is a lot happening in this music. It's like you take a bit of everything. You bring in the culture, the tradition, the classical, the voice. I mean, how does the voice even match to what the music is all about? It's so incredible. But a story.
Yes, a story which was flashing through my mind as I was listening to it.
What new? What came up? Because each time we tell a story, something else came up. What is it? Because I can see when...
Well, I mean, it was like someone's wedding, basically, and a very young bride, and her husband, who is a musician, who, well, sadly they're not together now, but I mean, like, they were together, marrying then, and most of the people that went to the wedding were Africans. West Africans,
Yeah.
Nigerians, and maybe Sierra Leoneans, and one or two Ghanaians, maybe.
Yes.
But the bride was actually English,
Yeah.
and so her family was like hosting it, was hosting the proceedings, and it just happened that her father worked in Highgate Wood. I think he was like a sort of like forest sort of. Well, I don't know, keeper somehow.
Yeah.
And so like where they lived was like on the edge of Highgate Wood. And there was a musician there, an older musician, senior musician, of the age group of the likes of Fela and others like that, who shall remain nameless. But in fact, I don't even know what happened to him, whether he's still alive now or not. In any case, he was present at the wedding. And what happened was that the groom, who was Nigerian, hadn't really done enough planning to make sure that the refreshments provided at the reception were all, in place at the right time. So there were like all the sort of things that you'd expect, like from an English kind of like reception, like finger food, crackers and vol au vent and what else were there? Crudités and all that kind of thing, and like rice salad and that kind of this sort of thing. And so me being sort of socially adaptable, and well, I wasn't born in Nigeria, so like I mean obviously it wasn't too much of a stretch to adapt to eating that food. So I sort of dug in. And there were this senior musician and a few others, like elder people that were there, were like kind of like looking at me very disapprovingly. One of them said, "Oh, how could you eat this, this food? It's like useless, onje ranu, which is useless food, and the kind of thing." And then, meanwhile, like the husband or the groom had ordered food from like a night. Well, those days it was Afri-Carib, like the restaurant still there in Finsbury Park, I believe, Stroud Green Road.
Right.
But like in those days, it was probably like the only one, if not the main one.
Yes.
Of the African restaurants in London.
Yeah.
And they'd ordered the food, but it had still not arrived, and so all these people were hungry, not very happy.
Yeah.
Waiting, and they were looking at people like me, sort of eating like this finger food and sort of like disapproving. So, a particular moment happened when like the bride's mother came into the room, and there was like this rice salad, and so like the man said, "Rice yotutu bimuaja."
What does that mean?
And then she said, "Oh, could you please tell me what you're saying?" And he said, "I'm saying that the rice is cold like a dog's nose." And so, which is what the direct translation. And so like she goes out of the room in a huff. And then
oh no.
And then she comes back later to say, "I'm pleased to announce that the food from the African restaurant has arrived." And he goes, "Oh, God." Yes.
And that's the beauty of creativity, isn't it? And the way you can just how did at that time, because I've never asked you this, did it dawn on you that I'm gonna put this into a song?
No, I didn't think of that it being a song then, but I can say that several times, many years later, there were times when that family were present. I mean, the mother of the bride had passed away, sadly, but the father was still around, and the bride herself and all of them, and like their children and everything, and that we would play this song in shows, and I'll tell the story, and they'd all laugh thinking about, remembering how it was in that moment. You know what I'm saying? So that was quite an interesting thing,
That's fascinating. I mean, really. But the album itself, you listen to the whole album, you can tell definitely you're coming from a classical background.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not done on a frequent basis like what you did with this album, the titles again?
Pilgrimage?
No.
Life Force Music.
Life Force Music,
Yeah.
Sorry. It's not common what you did with that in terms of merging the tradition, the classical. And when you hear voices singing into music like this, it's not something that it takes a while to adapt to the voice. Mm-hmm. But did you thought about all of this when you put in this album together? Because I don't think you can hear, or I've heard something like this on a frequent basis, or even after you've done it. It's not something that it's not an album that you come across. Artists stick to one thing. If they're classical, they stick to the classical production. What made you decided to kind of merge together? And this your latest project is, I think, it has a relation to maybe your first album, because the way you merge the classical, that Western aspect of it, even your voice tells that you're coming from this perspective. How was that for you back then, 10 years ago, or maybe even more, when you decided to do the album?
Well, I mean, the music on the first album, Life Force Music, was stuff that I'd created like from, in some cases, quite early in my career. Not particularly that song, A Taste of Pepper. That was a more recent song at the time. It was actually quite new. But there were some songs on it that were, songs I'd like created maybe even like 10 years before. It's the first album, and, you bring things that, from highlights from different times in my development, as a band leader, as a composer, as a singer, and all of those things. And like my training, like as a classical singer, was developing in that time. So my voice was changing through that time. And as a result of that, I guess I just sang as what my voice had turned into at that point in time, the songs that I'd already been creating from, years before. So that's really the story. It wasn't sort of contrived to make some kind of strange hybrid. It was more a natural kind of manifestation of my skills and talents coming together at that stage in that way.
And regardless of the market at that time, or even is now, you didn't sort of like had any hesitation of bringing it out, because it's not something that you see on the market every day.
Well, no, because I knew that, it's a calling for me. Creating the music I do is a calling. The singing and the composing, the writing the music, all of it, it's a vocation, a calling that has always been there. When I was a small child, I used to hear tunes in my head, and it's just following through from that. I've always been creative in that way. My creative practice started from when I was quite young, and so I was going to do it anyway.
When you said quite young, I mean, being that you grew up as a trained classical musician, a composer, a band leader, a teacher as well. Did you grow up in a Christian home where you were a chorister when you were younger, like myself?
Well, I sang in choirs, but not particularly in a church situation. No, it wasn't religious.
Oh, right, okay.
I had no religious upbringing whatsoever, actually. My parents are nominally Christians, but we didn't go to church. And before that, with the English foster parents, certainly not. At all.
Right, okay. So you grew up in a foster environment.
Well, my parents were students, so I stayed with English foster parents while my parents were studying. So they worked to pay them. There's lots of stories about that. Even films have been made about that in recent years. I guess it doesn't happen as much now as it used to happen when I was a child.
Yeah. So what then led you to the classical, environment, space at that time?
Well, music for me I've always been eclectic in my what I'm attracted to in musical terms. So, I loved the Beatles and I loved all that sort of thing, but then I also would hear music, the popular classical music that has endured through centuries, or maybe a couple of 100 years or whatever. I would hear that type of music on the radio and that also, or television, and that appealed to me as much as the pop music did. And so all of it has become part of my vocabulary, and that's the way it's always been.
So when you decided to go find interest in classical music, at what age and where did you first go? What was your first experience with that?
Well, I didn't really have access to classical music training until I went to secondary school in Nigeria. That was, strangely, it wasn't in England at all. It was in Nigeria that there was the thing of like the formal music, learning music theory, becoming aware of like composers, composition, doing like the associated board exams and all that kind of thing. Just the standard route that most people that go into that field go through. I encountered it in Nigeria, in Lagos.
Interesting, because one will expect that that education, just like the interest, but the interest was here before you found it here. You wanted to do that sort of music.
Well, I always knew that I would that I was drawn to singing, to performance, to music, to all of that. That was always there. That was a given. But then when I got to a situation in Nigeria where I had access to those things, then, I sort of ran with it.
Were you going to church back then to find that?
Well, no. I mean, the school I went to again was King's College, Lagos, and which was a school that, where it was not in any way. It wasn't started by missionaries. There was no sort of religious. How can I put it? It wasn't based around a religious ethos. But of course, you'd have assemblies where we would sing hymns, and and like if we were Christians and we were in the boarding house, then maybe we would go to the church once a month or something.
Were you active in the church, like helping out, or maybe the singing? Did that draw you into it?
No, like it was through just the things that were available in the school, like to be in the choir. I mean, I was just very fortunate to go to a school where there was all those things available. I could, there was a good choir, there were good leading sort of music teachers of that time in the country. There were orchestral instruments, that were ordered from abroad, and all of that stuff. So I had access to those things.
And you joined the choir? Did you join the...
Oh, yeah. Right from day one in school,
Okay.
I was in the choir.
Wow. I mean, it's interesting that the knowledge, the education in the music, studying it, happened in Nigeria. For how long were you there for?
In Nigeria?
Yeah.
I was in Nigeria for 11 years.
So you had your old secondary education
And university.
and university
Yeah.
in Nigeria.
Yeah.
For somebody who, I've never asked you this question before, but it's very interesting, that grew up in a foster home,
Mm-hmm.
and to go in an environment that your parents were from.
Mm-hmm.
How does that feel the first week, day, or the first week? How does that feel for you? Because it was a massive sort of cultural, it was like everything going on, isn't it?
Well, it was a trauma. It was basically a trauma because, well, I don't know that everybody who goes through that who went through that experience of, being fostered or whatever, or that guy, the one who was in, was it Wire? The Wire?
Yes.
What's his name? What's it? Adewale something. Adewale. You know the one I mean?
Yeah. The name is-
Yeah. Well, he made a film about it.
Mhm.
He made a film called Farming that had Kate Beckinsale in it.
Yeah.
And in fact, Kate Beckinsale played the foster mother in it. For some people, they had bad experiences like that, but mine was not a bad experience. I had a very good relationship with my foster parents, and so I didn't want to leave them. And so going to Nigeria was not, it wasn't particularly what I wanted, I have to say. But then, and then arriving there, I was staying. We were staying with like my uncle and aunt, my mother's older brother, who was a professor of civil engineering. And I remember we sat there. And they were in England as well before, you see. So so it was kind of an easy kind of landing.
So you knew them from here?
Yes, we knew them from here. They used to come and visit us when we were like with the foster parents too, because their son was also there, and then their son was almost like a brother to me because we'd grown up together. So there was that kind of, in a way, that transition. That some parts of it were easy in that way, and I remember like sitting down to like a meal, and they were all going to eat swallows, amala or eba or something, and then like my aunt said, "Oh, sorry, forgot. We'll make some chips for you in a minute." And my mother said, "No, stop. Do you see any white person at this table?" And we said, "No." He said, "Well, you're going to eat what everybody else eats." And that was it. We just had to start eating differently.
Oh, I mean, you didn't want it to partake of that.
No, it wasn't that we didn't want to. It was just that
They felt that
that they could,
you're used to this.
Yeah, that we were used to that, and that they would sort of make it easy for us to make the transition. Yeah.
So when you was at foster home, in foster home at that time, did your parents used to come and visit you?
Yes.
Okay. So when you said when you went back, trauma, how does that feel?
It was very, very painful. Very, very painful. It's like I just felt, well, I had no idea what to expect going beyond, you know. And of course, like, notions of what life would be like in Africa in those days compared to what people would say nowadays are very different. And well, another thing around that time was that the Nigerian Civil War had just ended, and so there were a lot of like television coverage and photos of the children that were starving in Biafra at that time that was circulated around. So that was again part of the imprint that was perhaps in my mind in being taken to Nigeria. You know what I mean? We went there exactly as that war ended.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
But that was not the experience. I mean, what about going to school? Because that would be a very different experience completely.
Well, yeah, school was very different too. It was more sort of competitive. There was more of a thing of like, you know, the whole thing of reports, and as in like who came first this week, who came second last week, who came, you know, all that kind of stuff. And like, you know, competitive parents were trying to make you always be at the top of the class and all that kind of thing, which was not something I had before that. I mean, I never had a problem at school earlier than that. I mean, I read very early, you know, earlier than a lot of the other kids and all that. So it wasn't like school was difficult for me, but there was still this thing of suddenly like learning was like there was this thing of the threat around learning. There was like competition and threat and all those things that were not there when I was in England, you know. And
the public you know, appraisal as well. Like when I'm in public, like in a class, if you do well, they will say, oh, you know, Juwon got 50%, 100%.
Well, I mean, like I wouldn't say that was shared too much, but I mean, there were, well, say within the school.
Within the school,
setting,
because the children, I mean, you know, that are doing well, they're always feeling very proud, very high, you know. Carry on, you know, that sort of way. So you know the brilliant ones in school, and you know the ones that are not.
So the whole thing of competition was a lot more. I mean, suddenly competition in terms of academia and learning was something which, I mean, I didn't really encounter before that. Put it that way. Nigeria suddenly gave me, well, I was suddenly immersed in that mindset.
So you were there for 11 years straight. Did you came back to...
No.
Straight?
Yeah.
When you knew, like, 6 months gone, I mean, the reality now is probably there.
Yeah.
And when did you actually knew that you're not coming back for a very long time?
Well, I mean, there was never any promise that we were going to be returning at any point. So I kind of just assumed that, well, if I was going to be returning, it would be of my own volition that I would be the one doing the returning, not that anybody else would be doing it for me.
Right.
You know, that was in my mind at that time. Yeah.
So, 5 years gone, in terms of adapting, because that's a very long time, how long it took you to adapt with the reality that you're here now and you need to do well at school and this is what you want to do? I mean, you want to be, how you want to establish yourself in Nigeria?
Well, it was because I had that sort of cousin who was a couple of years older than me, and I could see what he was going through, the process he was going through just as we arrived. So I already knew that, well, this is, you know, there's all these threats of competition and threat. I could see it right in front of me, you know, because he was like maybe at that age of doing common entrance and all those things at that point in time.
Yeah.
Well, the equivalent of 11 plus here, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, it wasn't, I don't think he had a very nice experience from what I saw, you know. And I felt in my mind at the time that that's not going to happen to me. That's not going to happen to me. You know, and so I kind of just took, you know, well, I like reading anyway. Even now, I like reading. So like, I think for some people they take reading as a chore. That reading is like something you do as a means to an end, or you do it because you get a certificate, or it gives you a good job, or whatever it is. But I've always been someone who reads out of interest. Right. You see, so that's all I needed to do, really.
Oh, that's incredible. So Nigeria, 11 years. We're talking about a foundation for you. I mean, how old were you? You said 11, isn't it, when you went back for the first time? Were you 11?
9.
But 9. So, yeah, you're quite old enough to kind of figure out exactly what the two different countries like at that time, and the culture. So, you can say Nigeria gave you that foundation of cultural awareness, that solidity to say, well, yes, my name, this is the place that it came from, and this is what it actually meant. It gives you that sort of solidity, isn't it? That confirmation.
Well, yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I guess if I'd stayed in London all that time later, I probably still would have known some of those things. My parents, I mean, who knows? If my parents had stayed in the UK, then maybe we would have no longer been living with foster parents, because they would have no longer been students, and then, we would have probably, come to have more of an understanding in that sense. That's quite most likely would have happened. But then it wouldn't have been as much as actually being in Nigeria, you know what I mean? Because then I got to meet my grandparents and extended family and all that sort of thing, which I would not have met in the same way. Yeah, so I knew 3 of my grandparents, and I know loads of people who never met even one, who have lived in Nigeria till they were age 40 or whatever, but I knew 3 of mine, so,
Incredible. So let's take another one from your album. I mean, we've just returned back from the radio because we're live on YouTube. So in case you missed part of it, we're live on YouTube. You can get the whole gist of what we're saying there. And I want to welcome all the people there on YouTube. Make sure you share if you haven't yet. And you subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. And welcome to this channel. And if you can like what you're listening to, we'll really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Well, this is another one from your album, Doing My Black Thing. I like this very, very much.
History, a story, a story. I'm not happy about African history. It's a prison cell that restricts me. Whatever I do, wherever I turn, I come to the Caribbean Africans who have stuck out their necks in England. Now it's time for me to talk. I don't want to crawl. I've got to learn to walk. African history. It's a prison cell that restricts me. Whatever I do, wherever
Doing My Black Thing here on Feferity Radio from my special guest. Yeah, this is by my special guest, Juwon Ogungbe, Life Force Music. That again is a very great interplay of so many things going on there, isn't it? Mm-hmm. How did you come to the arrangement of such production?
Well, the song existed for a while before I did the recording, but then when I did it with Noel Inyang, who was a schoolmate of mine, as a producer, and he spent some time, working his magic on making it sort of voguish and electronic, I suppose. But the basic arrangement, the song itself, is as we played it from time. Yeah.
Right. Time has passed. I mean, I think you will hear, I don't know, it was just after the first lockdown, isn't it? When you came in the studio.
Yes, I believe so, yeah.
Right. And lots have been happening.
Yeah.
So let's take one of your EP that you did last year. That is called the Palmares?
Palmares Promise.
Palmares Promise. So let's take a track from there, and so you can talk about what you've been doing for the past, I don't know, a couple of years since we last met.
Spirit plane, earth plane, Eko Egbo Ebemi. Gather together and hear my plea. Atifi àwọn nǹkan sílẹ̀ fún ìgbà pípẹ́ púpọ̀. We've left things festering for far too long. Àgbọ́dọ̀ mú ìwọ̀ntúnwọ̀nsí padà ní báyìí. We must restore balance now. I'm calling all offspring of the soil. Ẹgbẹ́sẹ̀ síwájú ẹ máa bọ̀, pẹ̀lú ọkàn mímọ́ ẹ máa bọ̀. Step forward and come with pure hearts. There's hard work to be done. There's hard work to be done. The roaming souls of real, whose remains lie in the cemetery dos Pretos Novo, with the souls of Brazilian quarters in the city of Ecole. I acknowledge their pain, their suffering should not be in vain. There's hard work to be done. There's hard work to be done. If one accepts that mistakes were made, that values and dreams need an upgrade, it's time to look within to seek atonement for sin. There's hard work to be done. there's hard work to be done. Iṣẹ́ líle wà tí a ní láti ṣe.
Incredible. Incredible. Thank you for that one, Juwon. This project, the Palmares Promise, do you want to talk about it? Because here we hearing a traditional Yoruba context and English flow in there. What is the Palmares Promise about?
It's about a quilombo in Brazil in the 19th century and before. Like, what happened was that there were groups of people that were enslaved, like Africans that were previously enslaved, who managed to escape, and they formed their own communities. And the largest of those communities was in a place called Palmares, because there were lots of palm trees around there. So I think it still exists now, this area called Palmares. And like, they were called quilombos, these enclaves or communities. And in Palmares, this particular one, which was the biggest, they had a whole system of governance. They had like a sort of military system, because they were they came. Even the name Quilombo came from a Central African language in Bangala, I think it is. And so they took certain elements of that tradition, and through that set up like a whole, as I say, system of governance. So there was a warrior king, and others who ran that community. But the community wasn't just people of that in Bangala background. There were, Africans and mixed people, and even sort of First Nation people of that up part of Brazil, all living together in that community. But they were able to keep the Portuguese at bay for almost 100 years. They kept that community going. And the lead, they had a warrior king called Zumbi, who is kind of very famous. In fact, in Brazil nowadays, there's a day that is set aside to commemorate Zumbi's passing. The Zumbi Day, and that is also used as a day of like reflection of national black consciousness in Brazil. Right. Brazil being the country with the second largest black population in the world after Nigeria. And it just happens that date, the 20th of November, that the National Black Consciousness Zumbi Day, is my birthday.
Wow. And that's the track I've got lined up, actually, the Zumbi Day track. I've got lined up for us to hear. But why did you embark on this project?
I was attracted to the idea that Zumbi is associated with the 20th of November, initially, because it's a day, as I say, it's a national day of black consciousness in Brazil. And I just found it very interesting. I mean, I was aware that like in the 1990s, Black Theatre Cooperative did a show that was a collaboration with a Brazilian theatre maker called Zumbi, which was about Palmares and all of what happened, elements of what happened anyway. I didn't see that play then, although I know people who were in it, who performed in it. So I was kind of aware of Zumbi from way back, but more recently, I kind of like, somehow I stumbled across this information and realized that, wow, it's the same as my birthday. And it's something that I want to identify with, just to to add to that, it's also Joe Biden's birthday, and it's
you're running with a big boy.
Yeah, and it's Good Luck Jonathan, who was the president of Nigeria's birthday too. So and so 20th of November, yes, it kind of that was the initial stimulus, as it were.
Well, let's all play you the tune that inspired my special guest, Juwon Ogungbe, to do this project, the Palmares Promise. This is Zombie Day.
Whenever I have a new dream of setting out on my way, as distant as it may seem, I prepare for Zombie Day. Oh, Zombie Day, ancestral spirits say. Oh, Zombie Day, auspicious time to pray. 20th of November, a moment to remember who I am and where I'm from. Now you know where I belong. Oh, Zombie Day, ancestral spirits say. Oh, Zombie Day, auspicious time to pray. Hands reach out from Brazil, through England into Africa. Whether you're a conscious sibling or you're rooted, it doesn't matter. Or you're rooted, it doesn't matter. Oh, Zombie Day, ancestral spirits say. Oh, Zombie Day, auspicious time to pray. Oh, Zombie Day, ancestral spirits say. Oh, Zombie Day, auspicious time to pray. Prospering in self-esteem, actualizing a zombie's dream.
Beautiful. Zombie Day by Juwon Ogungbe. That's the project, the Palmares Promise. I've got one more for you on that project, because we've got his new project that we're going to talk about here extensively, called Pilgrimage. But I was going to ask you, Juwon, because most of your pieces can be a play. You've done it before with, I don't know, a couple of years ago, King Solomon and Queen of Sheba. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that. But are you looking to do something with this, the Palmares Promise project?
Well, yes, I'm hoping that in the not too distant future that I can organize some kind of ensemble, and organize a show, a presentation that will include music from the EPs that I've done recently. So there's Glisten and Burn, the Palmares Promise, and Pilgrimage. These are all were done within the last year or so, and then other music apart from that, But King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, we did that last summer, last May.
Tell us about that.
Well, the last performance of it was in a festival called Freedom in the City Festival of Learning, which was happening in Bath, because Haile Selassie lived in Bath when he was in exile, when Mussolini invaded Ethiopia in the 1930s. And so his home, Fairfield House, was eventually bequeathed to the city of Bath. And someone I know, the person that instigated the festival, is on the board of trustees of Fairfield House. It just happened that I was minding my own business, creating my piece, King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, which came about because I went to Ethiopia on one occasion, and we went to the National Gallery. Like, it was an African Union type of event I was attending, and we were taken to the National Gallery, and then we were shown like an exhibit which was like the Queen of Sheba's, a model compound of the Queen of Sheba's home. And then the guy told the story of the way that King Solomon supposedly seduced the Queen of Sheba. And it occurred to me there and then in that moment that it would be an interesting story to do as a singing drama, as like, you know, an opera or music drama. And so I developed it over a couple of years. Like, there was I went to Zanzibar at one point. I was at the Dal Countries Music Academy in Zanzibar, and we did like some research and development work on the piece there. And then after that, the following year, back in London, I developed the score, and we did some performance at Theatre Peckham. That was in 2019, Theatre Peckham, we did it. And that was when this gentleman, who is a trustee of Fairfield House, saw it. And it just happened that he was doing this festival based on Haile Selassie and his relationship to Bath, and he suggested that we could have the opera as part of that festival, and so we did it. Lockdown notwithstanding.
How was the event?
It was beautiful in Bath. It went really, really well. But I mean, it was very, very stressful pulling it together because of all the restrictions.
Yes.
And occasionally singers coming down with like COVID, while we were rehearsing, and just working our way around all of that stuff. And so this is a reason why I have, in a sense, taken a step back from organizing live performances for a while. Well, I mean, I'm happy to do small live performances where I'm performing on my own or where I'm not depending on too many people, but like anything that requires, pulling together a sizable group of people, then you got to start worrying with when the phone calls come or the text messages come or the emails come or whatever it is, So I've just tried to sort of, keep that at bay for a while.
Yeah, well, I think things are getting there now.
Yeah.
I think a lot of musicians are willing and anxious to perform. But where can we see that performance? Is it on YouTube?
Right. Well, it was, as I say, it went really well in Bath, and it was an excellent group of performers, singers. It went, very, very well, and it was available on a website. No, on Vimeo, I think it was. It was available on the festival's website for about 3 months until the festival came to an end. So that was one version. There's another version of the Theatre Peckham one, which is not the full opera, but part of it you can see, I believe, on YouTube.
Right.
I think. On my website as well, because I have like a media kit for King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba on my website. And so there's more information about it there.
So your website is?
JuwonOgungbe.com.
Okay. Well, if you go on the Feferity event news page, you will see Juwon Ogungbe present Pilgrimage, and if you scroll down, you will get to his website. And details as well, contact details for him. Should we take another track? You talk about the Quilombo.
Quilombo dos Palmares.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's take it. My special guest here, an amazing voice, and to have him listening to such a classical feel to this sort of cool and calm Friday. It's a gift that we're proud to share with you here.
Quilombo dos Palmares. Quilombo dos Palmares. Have you heard of the brave escaping from bondage. Where did they go? Away from slavery, escaping from bondage. Is that so? Where did they go? Close to the mountains where many palm trees grow. Together they set up a Quilombo. Quilombo, what is a Quilombo? A place where they could live as a free community, with Africans making the most of their diversity. So, what do you know? Tell us more about this Quilombo. In the region where many palm trees grew, these Africans had visions of the kingdom that was new. Independence was theirs, imperialists kept at bay, and so began the Quilombo dos Palmares. In Quilombo dos Palmares, regardless of color or creed, they thrive. Quilombo dos Palmares, customs from the lands of their forebears survive. Quilombo dos Palmares, Quilombo dos Palmares.
Wow. Wow. Juwon Ogungbe there. Quilombo dos Palmares. Here on Feferity Radio. Very, very soothing. It's taking us in a very different place. Very slowly and gently. And it's a beautiful feeling. You know, when you listen to your music, so Juwon, because now we see a lot of musicians who don't have the background of musical education, don't have the voice, they don't train, they have this computerized voice, they sing, and you got now thousands of people jumping at their music. And here we hear this sort of music created, composed and created by yourself. When you look at like music channels and you see, you know, how people glorify and take into musicians, you know, who are famous, sold to us as good musicians. How do you feel as a composer, a true musician that writes, that put together such a wonderful music like this? How do you feel that the masses are not clunging, trying to rip your garment out?
Well, I think there's different audiences for different things, you know, and I wouldn't sort of like want to be judgmental about the choices that anyone makes, because everyone gravitates towards the things that make them feel something, you know. I think this music is still relatively sort of new in a way. Like, you know, these last three songs you've played were released like last November or something, you know, and in a time when it wasn't particularly easy to go and start looking for airplay, looking for ways for people to get to hear them beyond, you know, just what I was doing myself in terms of circulating them and all of that. So I'm just hoping that the point is that they're there, they're available for people to hear whenever, and at some point maybe people will latch onto them, and more people will get to hear them and want to share them and listen to them. You know, I wouldn't necessarily want to judge anybody else's kind of expression or creativity, you know, because
it's not even George, because I've got children, and when they sing and they're singing all these the music that they're into, I'm like, what are they saying?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they're trying to explain. I'm saying they're trying to explain.
Mm-hmm.
Here you are telling a story that still exists
Mm-hmm.
and relevant today. Putting a very beautiful composition takes a lot of time because it's creativity to work out. So I'm not judging. It's just that I sit behind the mic
Mm-hmm.
and I listen to a lot of music, and I got children that will sing, and I'm like, what is that relating to? How does that? It's just a hype. It's just a lick. It's just something.
well, I know what you're saying, but I mean, like, for example, there was a time when a friend and I went into a diner in Soho, and he's from Ivory Coast, and he was brought up in Africa, born and brought up in Africa, came to live in Britain as an adult, you know, way into his adult years and that sort of thing. And a song came on, like, in this diner, like, set is very much like an American, it was like done like almost like a 1950s kind of, you know, diner joint.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a jukebox in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I, you know, requested on the jukebox for a particular song that I liked from when I was a child,
Mm-hmm.
which was a song by a group called Thunderclap Newman, and it's called Something in the Air. And they played it, and I said, yeah, I loved this song when I was a child. And I told him, and he was like, you loved that when you were a child? You actually got to hear things that were as vivid and colourful with all all this stuff in it. You know, your childhood must have been very different to mine, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I think some of it is to do with exposure to imagination, stimuli, and that sort of thing as well. So everyone gravitates towards what they get to hear, what they're exposed to. And that's the reason. And when I say about judging or assessing, and I'm not talking about you in particular, I just mean that generally, that you know, it's the same as saying, why do some people read broadsheets? Why do some people read The Guardian or, you know, The Telegraph or whatever, as opposed to reading The Sun or read you know, a tabloid newspaper? You know, the same way, some people want to gravitate towards hearing music that is kind of instant, that, you know, they can just like get down and groove to. And that's not to say that all music that you get down and groove to is not sublime. I mean, like, James Brown is tremendous, you know, and a lot of African music of that sort. You know, I think of some people that play incredible dance music, you know. So, you know, there's a place for everything, you know. But within that, I suppose we can say that some things have changed within the practice of music. I mean, when you started the program today, you were playing Afro funk and Afro rock from probably from the 1970s. You know, it's very different to the kind of thing that young people in Africa are listening to now.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they're both sort of groovy music. You know, they're both nice genres of party music, but then not all music is for parties. That's the other thing.
Well, I mean, it's true, but also in terms of how the music is distributed, kind of music like this, you will want to hear it also, not just on Feferity Radio, but, you know, we've got a station called Classical FM.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any chance your music has been played on those medium?
Well, I mean, I say it's still early days, you know, like, I'm developing all this stuff, and like, hopefully somewhere along the line, people will latch onto it and will play it.
Sure.
That is my hope.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about your new project as it is now. This was released. Is it last week? Isn't it?
Yes.
Week?
Well, the 27th of May. Yes.
Yeah. And this is a very exciting new album for you, and a journey to a place that your parents are from.
My mother was from.
Your mother from in Nigeria. Your parents are from Nigeria, and a place called Abeokuta. Tell us about this new project, Pilgrimage, and how it actually came to you.
Okay. I think sometimes you're prompted, or I am prompted anyway, and I've learned to listen to my intuition about things. And one interesting thing about my mother's family was that my mother died when I was like 14 years old. So after that time, the contact with her family was a lot less than it was before that. Abeokuta, the city, is quite close to Lagos. And so my father's family is from a lot further into Yoruba land, after Ibadan, way, way further. A place called Oriliogu, near to Ife, actually. I feel that, one thing, for whatever reason, I never ever went to Abeokuta with my mother, or Ifo, which was like a sort of a place that was close to Abeokuta that my mother came from. I never actually went there with my mother, never saw where my mother grew up, never saw any of those things. I felt that I wanted to kind of imagine what it would be like to make that journey to go there, knowing what Abeokuta stands for culturally within the Yoruba people, but also within Nigeria as a whole, because that's where the Anglican Church missionaries first settled. And when they did, they spread the word from there. Ajayi Crowther, who went from Sierra Leone to Abeokuta, and then translated the Bible to Yoruba from English, and all that sort of thing happened, and it became like the hub of like Western education and all that sort of thing, which has led to a certain kind of elite in terms of education in Nigeria coming from there, such as Wole Soyinka, a Nobel Prize winner, such as Fela Anikulapo Kuti, whose father was actually an Anglican priest, and all that sort of thing, But there's another side to Abeokuta, which is that, in my sort of research about it, I found that before the Anglican missionaries, or any missionaries at all, Christian missionaries, were allowed to settle, they consulted the oracle, and the oracle of, probably of the rock, which is there's Abeokuta means under the rock in English, and that the rock in question is Olumo Rock. And within Olumo Rock, there is a shrine to the spirit of the rock. Anyway, the traditional belief, priests and clerics they consulted the oracle, and it was said that they should allow the missionaries to settle, that it would enhance Abeokuta's standing, right? And so that was how they were allowed to settle there, and so in my imagining now, as somebody going there, I wanted to imagine what it would be like to go A, to like the church environment, be in a Christian fellowship environment, and B, going to the shrine, going to this Ulumo Rock shrine, and wanting to, in a way, touch base with any kind of ancestral forces there, you know. But then there's the fact that, you know, those things are seen to be at odds with each other. As you probably know, it's probably similar in Sierra Leone that you don't, you know, if you're a Christian, you're a Christian. You don't appear to be consulting with, you know, the spirits, even, or you know, or going to you know, an ancestral shrine or whatever it is. You're not supposed to do that, although people do it anyway. But there's a, you know, there's a kind of ambivalence around all of that, and that is really what, essentially, what pilgrimage is about. It's about this ambivalence that many of us feel about, well, being honest with ourselves, that, well, yes, I mean, we can be open to ideas, and of course Christianity has brought very useful things to us, you know, like the Western education, you know, the literacy, you know, all that stuff, which has helped us tremendously. But on the other hand, there was something we had before, you know, and one wouldn't want to like throw away the baby with the bathwater. And there's no reason why we should feel embarrassed or, you know, there's no reason why we should feel there's something wrong with you know, engaging with that.
Is it down to, well, the colonial enforcement in terms of the colonial education that was enforced upon Africans at that time, where we've seen in documentaries and so on, where it is a shame to worship your gods. It is a shame. It's like they use the word abomination. I don't know where that came from. To kind of connect to your ancestral spiritual forms. So is it part of that is still embedded within a certain section of the religious community?
I think so. Well, I don't know that it's colonial now, because in some cases a lot of the developments are post-colonial. So, for example, the Pentecostal movement was not there in the colonial times, really. If it was like very kind of minuscule. It wasn't a major presence.
Well, that was suppressed as well, because, again, the colonial area, they don't want to shout, they don't want to sing, they don't want to dance. So these things were curtailed.
Yeah, but then, like, there were the syncretic, as in, like, the kind of the churches that fused elements of the African fellowship or praise and worship practice with Christian belief, such as the Aladura, Celestial, all of that, and that came from a fissure, a kind of a breaking away of a particular group of people from the Anglican or whichever church, you know, to form these more Africanized Christian fellowships. So I mean, that was happening on one side, but then along with that, there were some of these people would still go to consult, you know, an Ifa priest, you know, and that is my point. That, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily go and do it myself. I wouldn't necessarily go and consult an Ifa priest, not because, well, I haven't felt the inclination to do that. Put it that way. Not because I have any kind of judgment that it's evil or it's good or it's bad. Just because I haven't felt the inclination, I haven't been to consult one. But for those who do, they shouldn't be regarded as people who are dabbling in something dangerous. Right. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So do you think then it's because when you mentioned the Aladura in Sierra Leone, there is a branch that started way back, I think, in the 60s in Sierra Leone, the Aladura Church. And there you can see the combination of the Old Testament and the African traditions. So, you know, that was still going on. But do you think the emergence of these born-again churches and Nollywood I'm going to include Nollywood. Because when you watch a lot of movies and when you go into these born-again churches, it's like the things that have made their ancestors stronger is the same very thing they're casting aside, casting away as evil.
Well, yes, that is the reason that I said that I regard some of like the attitude towards traditional belief systems as post-colonial, because the born again to me is Pentecostal. Yeah, I mean, like, I remember when I was in secondary school, like they used to show all these Billy Graham films and stuff, you know, in what used to be called the Scripture Union in those days, SU. You know, so basically it's a more Americanized form of Christianity. And it seems to me that the agenda there was to wrest away the influence from Rome and Canterbury by the Americans. This whole Pentecostal movement, as far as I can see, that's what it's about. And, you know, the practice of everything within them, as far as I'm concerned, is about that. It's like it's different from being a Catholic or a Baptist or a Methodist or a Seventh-day Adventist or whatever it is, you know. And it's therefore that the influence is no longer with the people that lead those movements, but with American sort of preachers. And then like, so the more recent African mega church preachers who based themselves or based their practices, based their whole way of doing things on what they've learned from the Americans.
That's right.
And that was not colonial. So it's, you see what I'm saying? So to me, it's kind of post-colonial.
It is post-colonial, but I think because of the imprint, you know, is very significant. Because sometimes you can relate to things through others, because others relate to it. There are that you're part of the greater community, you know. There's tendency for one to relate to that as well. Called trending. But let's take a track from this new project, the new EP, Pilgrimage. And this one is Letting Go of My Baggage. Let's listen to it, because this is another fantastic piece here. We're all fortunate to be soothed by my special guest today, Juwon Ogungbe. And from his new EP, we're talking about Pilgrimage. This is Letting Go of My Baggage.
It was freezing cold in the night time when I boarded the plane to be here. I tried to sleep in the economy seat, knowing more discomfort was near. I did my best in the airport, got through the checkpoints in one piece. I was glad to see my chaperone. I was one less person to fleece. The light of day on the motorway made me feel my safety was real. The heat of the sun brought out torrents of sweat, so I looked like an easy meal. But I brushed away the shysters and made it to your cave. I'm here to ask for your counsel. Would you say I'm foolish or brave? Would you say I'm foolish or brave? Invisible strings are pulling, I can't resist the urge. Letting go of my baggage, letting go of my baggage. In the streets outside of here, people of my bloodline want. Now I have the chance to retrace their steps, since I haven't heard how they talked. I'm counting on you, oh Oracle, to send me to the source. Every tree has its branches, but the roots pull in due course. Invisible strings are pulling, I can't resist the urge. Letting go of my baggage, letting go of my baggage.
Letting go of my baggage. This track definitely set the tone for the complex range of emotions the traveler feels about engaging with the oracle. This play, I mean, is about an imagined city, isn't it? Like the form of
yes, it's like imagined based on Abeokuta, but you know the idea is that it's. Well, I haven't been to Abeokuta, so I can't tell you. You can
Someone
go,
was actually,
if you go down that road there, you'll see this. I can't tell you that. So I mean, it's all imagined.
You are very close, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I've passed through Abeokuta, but I haven't really been there to, look around, do anything. Yeah.
Do you have any intention of going there since you've actually created an imagined replica of Abeokuta? Would you want to?
Well, I mean, I certainly the next time I go to Nigeria, I think I would want to go there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, letting go of my baggage. I mean, it sounds like a medication that we all can. So, tell us about, because it did set the tone, isn't it? I mean, tell us about this traveler. What do you imagine about this traveler going into the city?
Well, the traveler. Well, all I can say really is the traveler. It's kind of it's kind of based on me, but I didn't sort of create a character in the way that I might have done in some of the other things I've done. Mm-hmm. I didn't create a character. It was more like, just my imaginings of, what would it be like for me if I was going through this particular experience, I'd say.
And indeed, it's so true, because when we go to Africa, because we have a lot of information that is coming to us here in the West, isn't it? If you're in England, America, Canada, and there's lots of information coming through. And when we go with this preconceived judgment, like we are the oracle, we come to solve the problem of this mess. And we take this pomposity and arrogance with us when we go home. It's like a baggage, isn't it?
Yes.
Because the West, we think we know everything.
Well, yes.
So is it a sort of thing that applies to all of us, really, when we think of going to eternal home, especially Africa in this case, where we tend to want to go and correct them rather to go and understand them?
Well, I mean, that's one way of looking at it, but I mean, there are others as well. It's just like, it's hang-ups, really. For me, like, baggage is basically, in this case, emotional baggage is like, the hang-ups. And to give it, I think around that time when I was creating this music, or just, very close to that time, I was working with a group of actors on a production, and there were several young second or third generation Nigerians involved in that production, and they the production itself had a lot of references to things in Nigeria, places in Nigeria, so they had to pronounce the names as they should be said, because they could get you close to as actors, they could get you close to, they could create characters that were believable, but then they would say this word and it would stick out like a sore thumb as not being the right thing. That just from that word that this person isn't really from there. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And then the kind of hang-ups that they would have about just hearing the inflection, the speech inflection of the way something is said, the way a place is pronounced, or name of somewhere or something, and I had to give it, because I was like coaching these actors. There was, in one case, I told the story of this actress who is of Jamaican or some kind of Caribbean background anyway. I'm not sure if it's Jamaican, but she's a fine actress, and she was in a play at the National Theatre, which was about elections and, rigging and that sort of thing in a fictional African country. But they decided to base it all in the east of Nigeria, like in terms of, to make it specific. So it was about Igbo people. And she did not speak Igbo at all, but she had to play a whole scene in Igbo. And she did it. And I don't understand Igbo well enough to know whether she was right or wrong, but she committed herself to it. She threw herself into it. And I mean, an actress I've known for a long time, and I really admired her for, the courage, that, willingness to go that far in doing that. And it made me say to these actors who are of, second, third generation Nigerians, but listen, you hear your parents saying these things at home. If you have a problem when you get to saying that word, it's because you have baggage around that. It's the baggage of who are you, I don't speak like that because I'm not that. I'm British, really, and that kind of thing. Whereas
we want to wrap our tongue.
I'm British. But if I'm British, but if you're an actor, though, you've got to commit, to the character you're playing, And so you see.
Well, I mean, actors is like ability, isn't it, to adapt?
Yes, but
not just environment, but language and.
Yeah, but this is closer to home because they were playing something that was close to to their lineage, to where their parents are from, and it's all kind of wrapped up with how they see themselves compared to their parents, compared to their relatives, compared to, and that sort of thing. You see?
Yeah,
and so they are not the same as their relatives or their cousins who might live in Nigeria or their cousins who might live in America, for that matter. They're all kind of different one way or the other. But the point is that as an actor, if you want me to believe you, when it's time to say Abeokuta, you have to say Abeokuta, and so I know that yes, you know how to say it. You see, Did you see? So that's so to me, the baggage is that sort of baggage.
I mean, also there can be baggage thrown upon us. Us as our children. When they go home and they're trying to speak the language, they might not emphasize on the phonetics very well. But then, they get laughed at, not in a bad way, but, then they kind of feel like, oh, well, I'll give up.
Well, in some cases they give up. In some cases, like, they struggle on and they want to keep doing it, and I think, let's face it, even our African languages and dialects will have to kind of take on new kind of like strands and shapes. Like maybe there will soon be a London kind of Yoruba, a London type of Pidgin English, a London type of Creole, a London.
Oh, please let it not be a London type of Yoruba.
you know what I mean? Maybe that, because let's face it, like London is like outside of Nigeria is probably the place where there are more Nigerians than anywhere else in the world.
There's more patois here, Pidgin, than
or more Yorubas than anywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
When I go to the States, or even if I go into Europe, go to Switzerland or whatever, people come and say, well, if I instead of going to Nigeria, I just go to London. Then I'll feel like I've gone to Nigeria. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So in that sense, there could be like a London kind of Yoruba that becomes, a distinct kind of like dialect in itself. Very easily there could be. It's not there now, but there could be one.
Yeah, I think in terms of the Pidgin, it's very popular, very, very popular compared to years and years ago, where people were like feeling a little bit hesitant to even say cha, ana, idiot, and all of that sort of stuff. And even names of food now it becomes more fluid in people's, vocabulary now. So that is a good thing. But I think there's many years for that in it. Like Yoruba, widely spoken. Who are these people? Well, I played this the other day. The Oracle once told us, and I loved it. Let's listen to it.
Okay.
Talking about Oracle, I mean, there is nowhere in Africa the word Oracle is just a cultural word that refers to respect for what has gone before.
No, there
in a
are
simple term.
No, there are shrines, and so when you go to a shrine, surely you are addressing some entity. Yeah.
Right.
And that entity is the oracle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The Oracle once told us. You know, everybody goes to Nigeria and they come up with message. And I would love to know the message from my special guest today about the Oracle. And he said actually he's never been to one. And I'm not sure. That is like, what? I'm intrigued now.
I heard the sermon, mama. The preacher made it clear there is no space for pagans in your fellowship right here. I will not make excuses for my actions or offenses. I've come to you in peace, but my feelings need a release. The oracle once told us to be open in our minds, allowing settlers and their thieves to mix and let in all kinds. Can you make space in your heart? Let the wisdom sink in. Tearing unity apart is where enmity begins. The oracle once told us to be open in our minds, allowing settlers and their thieves to mix and let in all kinds. Asher, let it be so. Asher, let it be so.
Asheo. Yeah, the Oracle once told us. How powerful are oracles? What significance do they have in the lives of the people?
Well, in the Yoruba traditional belief system, there's the Ifa oracle, and there's a whole system that involves divination, there's an element of chance in it because people use cowrie shells or palm nut kernels or cola nuts or whatever it is, and they cast shapes. These are the priests now. They cast these shapes, and from those shapes, whatever shapes, the patterns that are formed correspond with information. And there's like, I think, I can't remember the number, but maybe over 200 chapters of advice, information about things that you could refer to and apply that to a given situation. So if you have like an issue or a problem or something that you need to get sorted out, and you go and consult a babalawo, as the priest would be called. That babalawo would like do the divination, and a shape would be formed, and then whatever that shape is would correspond to a pattern of, you know, an odu ifa, you know, and the odu is like a chapter of the sacred sort of liturgy, or whatever you want to call it, a series of chapters and verses, and that would be used to advise the person on what they need to do to rectify the situation, or to use it to, or, you know, to, well, for improvement or whatever it is they want to do.
That's why I was like taken back when you says, pardon, you've never really even like intrigued, curious to go to Oracle, to go look at things, what is happening, what is wrong. Why is that? As a Nigerian, it is something like a rite of passage, I would say, where most people would go, especially, you know, if things are not going right in life. Sometimes there are difficulties, obstacles that you can't figure out. One would have said, let me just be curious and take that chance. Why wouldn't you?
Well, I mean, I can't say that I haven't been to any shrines before. I know I've seen shrines, and I have seen people doing divination, but they're not necessarily babalawos, right? I think there is, well, this is a bit, this is where baggage comes in too, because people tend to believe, or tend to think, that if you do something like that, that you could only be doing it with ill intent. Right. That you could only be doing it because you want to go and like pour sand in someone else's gari, or whatever it is. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's almost
retaliation.
Like so being seen to be doing it in any way at all is a bit like, you know, what are your intentions? What are you aiming to do here? You know, and so I guess I have tried to sort of maintain a very kind of neutral kind of stance in that way, simply because of, well, to be honest, I think because of what I think others might think of me, which is, you know, maybe that's a kind of a weak thing to say, or vulnerable thing to say, but that's the way I see it.
So you're much more conservative towards the idea?
No, I wouldn't say that, because, like, strangely, if it was in the context of the diaspora, I've been involved, for example, like with, if you remember, with the London Lukumi choir and that sort of thing. Yeah. The Cuban sort of, let's say the Cuban sort of chapter or section of the Yoruba worship and Ifa and all of that. If someone said to me, come and let's go and see a Babalawo that was Cuban, I probably wouldn't think twice about it. I'd probably just go. But there's something about going to do it
in Nigeria,
in Mushi, or in or wherever, that I don't know if I'm ready for that yet. Let's put it that way.
That's what explains it, isn't it? Letting go of the baggage. It's true. It's like, you know, we feel more comfortable when we go places like that for a holiday, in fact, than going home. Terrifying, the idea.
No. Like in London, like, there are people that do it, you know, and I'm sure there are babalawos like of the Yoruba kind of from the Nigerian section in London. There must be.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, and I haven't really felt the inclination to go to them neither.
You feel like you don't believe them as the way you would believe the Cuban, or maybe in Nigeria they're so believable that you will get frightened whatever comes out. Is that the kind of
Well,
thing?
I think there's this thing where, well, I don't know if that applies to all parts of Africa, but I see Nigeria as a parallel universe. You know, it's like you go, it's almost like you step into a different dimension, and people start saying, do this, do that, do this, do that, or, you know, or else, and, you know, and you get caught up in it. And like, people know how to pull at the heart, you know, pull the strings to make you feel emotionally triggered one way or the other, all of that. So for that reason, I try to sort of, my interest is anthropological.
Right.
If you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is like, it's the same way as well, isn't it? You're digging up for something that probably you can expect. The gravity of the thing that you might see might be different as well, the effect of that. But yeah, it's quite interesting, really, because when I went to Sierra Leone, we have also Babalawos, the seers, and I find it really interesting, to go see those people. I'm very intrigued, curious, just to go hear what's going on. And I remember one time, because even in London, they have it in so many different places. And one time I was very curious to go find out. I was looking through the paper for something else, and I saw these, clairvoyant and all of that. So I'm like, oh, it's kind of interesting. Let me go find out. So I went there, and I waited in the waiting room. And when I saw the lady, she looked at me and goes, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, I don't know, I'm just curious. You don't need to be here. I swear that's what she said to me.
Really?
Yeah. So I kind of like very, in that way, say inquisitive to just know. And also another thing happened. I went to the States, and on my arrival, I was on the metro. There were a lot of busking going on. So someone handed me a flyer of this Pastor John, that he can do this, he can do that, spiritual man, blah, blah, blah. And I was very intrigued because the things that Pastor John can do is incredible. So automatically I'm intrigued, especially when this is more like the spiritual stuff. I'm like, okay, let's go find out what's going on there. And this is a very incredible story because I think for days, I didn't bother. It didn't occur to me. So I was looking through my bag, and I saw this flyer. So I'm like, oh, something's there. Just call Pastor John, and I did. I called, and I'm like, yeah. So he direct me. I goes, oh, I saw your flyer, and I just want to come and have a chat. So yeah, gave me the address, and I went there to see. And the thing that really got me, because this is what I'm saying, I'm very intrigued, like curious in terms of like, So, knocked the door, and the daughter, it was a daughter. And I tell you what, it's a Juwon. I think she's got elephantiasis. Her feet was massive.
Right.
She couldn't even move. Like, you can see that she is not well. But yet, this is the man that heals and pray.
Okay.
And done. So, automatically, it's like, my chakras now, they start like going,
Yeah.
Anyway, I was quite modest, because sometimes you don't really judge that way.
Yeah, sure.
So, entered, and he's got this massive shrine, this little room with a shrine and a big, massive cross, and candles and everything burning and all of that. And there's this thing about aura sometimes with people, because sometimes, it's like you've been in certain places, you can tell that you're welcome here, or maybe not, or maybe you can feel good here, or maybe not.
Yeah.
That aura tells you. So he came into the room, because the doctor said, yeah, go and sit over there. So I sat there, and he came into the room. Pastor John was like talking. So everywhere I went, I took my camera with me, my video camera, everything. It wasn't on, but it was just there. Not ready to film or nothing like that, but I just carry it. So if I see anything, interesting, I'll just pull my camera and film. So, and Pastor John says like, yeah, were you here? So I told him, I goes, yeah, I just saw this thing, and what he says here, life can be difficult, so I just want to have a little prayer and all that kind of stuff. And he said, like he's been doing this for many years. So I'm thinking, but at the same time, I could hear some rattling going on, not in the room, but in the house.
Right.
Like the wife is shouting for something. I'm not even, but there's a feeling of discomfort going on in the house.
Okay.
Right. Yet still, it's like no problem at all. So he said, yeah, well, we can do a prayer for you, like 7 days prayer and all of that, and it's going to cost you $500. There was something in me, even though like I knew like what are you doing? But there's something in me like just go on. Yeah. So I said, okay, I'll come the next day and I'll sort you out. So they can start the prayer. It's a 7 days prayer. So came the next day, boom, $500, to Pastor John's pocket. So I'm there now. I forgot about this thing, right? So it's like the next day or 2 days after, Pastor John called me to come. And he goes, well, I want to give you something to put under your pillow. I'm like, that's not what we're begging for. I was nothing like, you said you're going to pray. I'm like, trust that. So what are you giving me? And actually, I was staying in somebody's house, a friend of mine. So I said, I'm not taking nothing into people's house, right? You said he's going to pray. And I could feel he's getting agitated and confused and worried and really like, he was spaced out. So he goes, but this thing is part of it. And I goes, no, Pastor John, you said you're going to pray. You're going to buy candles, the money for the candles, and you're going to give the people in the church to pray. And that's fine. No problem. So, and he goes, well, come back the next day or the day, And he said, no, well, I'm going to give you this white stuff and, like a cloth. I says, Pastor John, get it. I ain't taking nothing into people's house, right? So anyway, I started now to think about this whole thing because you got to really, as the Bible says, or whatever it is, you you got to test. You got to prove,
yes,
that what you're doing is true, is just, is right. So in my head now, I'm thinking, no, what's going on? This cannot be godly. Anyway, forget about that thought. Spent my day roaming around, having a good time, went home. And I'm there the fourth day. It's like something just in my head telling me, go and see Pastor John. Go and see Pastor John. Tell Pastor John that he needs to stop what he's doing and concentrate on his family. So I'm like thinking, gosh, what's going on here? And this message keep coming in my head.
Right.
And I'm like, what's going on here?
Your subconscious was processing the whole thing and like it came to that.
Yeah. So anyway, I couldn't stop thinking about that. It's like the voice or whatever. So I phoned Pastor John. I said, Pastor John, I'm coming to see you tomorrow, but I want you to stop what you're doing now. And he was like, what? I can stop what I'm doing. I've given the money. We've bought the candles and they're doing the prayers and all of that. So I can't stop. I said, well, I'm coming to see you tomorrow. So I went. This happened to me. The old realization of what was going on, what I was doing,
right.
It was only afterwards. Because I'm in America where I don't know this guy, this man don't know me.
Yeah.
And they have guns in their possession, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I mean, they can just load me up, put me in a plastic bag or whatever. Who knows?
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't know. But, when you're guided by that spirit and that conviction, So I went to see him and I told him exactly what the message that came to me.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, he could not argue. He was very humble. But yet still now, it's like, okay, but we can't stop what we're doing. I goes, no, just stop. If you've bought the candles, give me the rest of the candles. I don't mind. I'll take them, right? Whatever. And just get my money back. Just stop. This is the message I've got. I mean, I don't know you don't know me, but this is the message. Stop. Concentrate on your family. However, when it comes to the money, he said, well, come back, the next day or whatever it is. So I went there. That was some giant guys. I've never seen them in my life. So huge, like 7. Yeah. So it's like, so I sat in the in his little shrine, and they came inside and goes, what happened? So I told him, I goes, I don't know this man. I came here genuinely for this, but this voice was in my head, right? And if he's a religious man, he will know, right? I don't know, but it's just like, stop and concentrate on your family. So I just need my money back. And they came out of the room, and they came back in, and it's like, okay. And they goes, well, we can't give you the whole $500 because we're going to take money for his consultation. I goes, how much is that? About I think $50 or something like that.
Okay.
You know, or maybe $100.
Right.
I said, no problem.
Okay.
I can take my 4.
Yeah.
I go.
Yeah.
Juwon, is only when I walked out of the house, I'm like about 100 meters down. And that's the whole thing just dawned on me of like, what have you just done? It's like I was possessed.
Well, yeah, perhaps you were, but I think it might have just been that you were like your subconscious was processing all of that information, and like your intuition was telling you that there was something not right about the situation. Yeah, and then going there at the end of the day, they knew that if the police got involved, it could turn into something else as well. So they couldn't just say, well, we're not paying you, because then you could have like you could have taken recourse to other, you could have gone down some other route in that sense. So I think like there are times when we're processing information where our subconscious minds are taking it in, and it takes a while for us to sort of feel what it is that we need to actually do in a situation. It's interesting that was in America of all places. America, home of Pentecostalism, home of like the born again.
The whole street was clamoring. The whole street was full of them.
Yeah.
But when you said about taking other course, if they refuse to, I can tell you now, I didn't have no second, motive of like, how am I going to get my money back? I just said it.
Yeah, I know, but they probably thought they were thinking ahead, thinking that you could do that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
it was a matter of if they kind of refused to give me, it was like, okay, is your stupidity, is your loss. Probably that's what I would have done. But I think I was possessed by something.
Well, maybe you were. I mean, maybe it's quite possible too. But I mean, like relating that to like the African situation and relating that to what's even happening online now, thinking of what happened during the lockdown with the number of fetish, as a friend of mine used to describe them, fetish priests from Ghana who would send you like emails saying, like in their sort of profile you see like wads of cash, piled up notes of cash, and they're telling you, whatever your needs are, I can deal with them. Just tell me, talk to me, come to me. And so like initially, maybe I feel, well, maybe I should like, at least, cause I tend to be open with social media because, as an artist, I want more people to know about my work. So if someone says he wants to become my friend, wants to follow me or whatever it is on the social media, I will say yes. But then when I discover that person is trying to rope me into something like similar to what you're talking about now, then I get wary. In some cases they go and they found my phone number and they try to get onto WhatsApp and I block them, and that sort of thing. Because I just think back to what happened with Fela and Professor Hindu and all of that. I mean, there's no doubt that Fela he met Professor Hindu at a time when he was vulnerable emotionally, and Professor Hindu manipulated him.
But again, Fela is always immersed himself into the cultural arts of, Africa. So it's not a new phenomenon for him. It's not a new pathway.
True, but I feel that the Professor Hindu thing was, it was kind of very, very public. It was after the house was burnt down, the film was burnt, his mother had been thrown out of the window and she, died subsequently, all those things happened. And then he went to Ghana and stayed in Ghana. And while he was there, suddenly came under the influence of this person in a way that he had not been before. You know what I'm saying?
But yeah, I mean, it's all different because, sometimes you might go to receive, but at the same time, like in my situation, you go to give, because of what happened to Pastor John. Maybe that changed him, maybe that changed everything. So
chance would be a fine thing. Somehow I don't think so, but yes.
well, I got my money back. I mean, who knows how many people is refunded? Maybe not.
Yeah, you know.
You know. But I mean, what I'm saying is, I'm more intrigued, you know, to go places like that, especially when it's tradition. You know, to find out. You know, to have an idea of what is going on. I mean, when you talk about these babalawo, like some, you know, guys that will meet you on the road and promise and want to take money from you. Those things, to me, it doesn't sit well with me. You know, because these are gift. You know, they are gift, and once you deliver the message, if it comes back to be true, then they will bring you gift. You know, because it's a gift, it's a message. So now the whole thing is much more commercialized, and you know, so but that's what, for me, I'm more intrigued when money is involved. You know what I mean? So I'm more intrigued in that. But what do you say about the Nollywood? Because Nollywood, I mean, you watch it, you see, like, you know, tradition against Christianity. It's like a battle, and then the Christians will win.
Well, you see, like, there's a genre within Nollywood that is based,
I don't understand that at all.
There's a genre within Nollywood that is based on the Billy Graham films. You know, like, a friend of mine did a PhD on visual representation and specialized in Nollywood. You know, he did it like in Switzerland, and he's of Nigerian background, but he did it in Basel, University of Basel. And part of it, in his research, he was able to kind of, like, you know, itemize different types of Nollywood films, you know, and there were the ones that were very much of the genre of what they call the Hallelujah Nollywood type genre, you know, and within that, there were some, like, really kind of dangerous operators, like that woman, the woman from Calabar, who basically, I don't think she had any children of her own, and she had this thing of, like, demonizing children, like, you know, presenting children as somehow agents of witchcraft, you know, like, and presenting them doing things in narratives in Nollywood films where they were kind of somehow impairing other people's health and that sort of thing. You know, so it's very manipulative, and as I say, it comes directly from the Billy Graham, those films that he made all those years ago, and they kind of went into doing that. I don't know, I've never really been an aficionado of, like, Nollywood. I can't say that I've, you know, it's not something that I've been in a few Nollywood films, my London Nollywood films myself.
Which one?
Well, there's Rhoda Wilson is a producer. I don't know if you know of her. Rhoda Wilson Productions, and she did something called Christmas and the King.
Christmas and the King.
Yeah, so she's done several She's doing one right now, actually, a Christmas movie, and so I was in one of those.
Is it? What role did you play?
Well, I wasn't. Well, it was like she just called me to play the piano, and like in like a kind of palatial setting. But she also did, more like a TV series, and the TV series, which has not been released, which I acted in. I acted the role of a probation officer in that. So my experience of, like, Nollywood is basically London Nollywood, UK Nollywood, and I don't know. I mean, it depends on the preoccupation of the makers, I suppose. Some of them are more preoccupied with that sort of thing than others.
Is that on Netflix or Prime?
I don't know.
There's a lot of movies now. London actually is showing on Prime.
Well, I think
Amazon.
I think I'm not sure. I don't. You know, Rhoda doesn't always, like, disclose all the details of where her films get distributed or shown. I don't think she's with Netflix, though. I don't think so. But I can say that on the other hand, like in the Nigerian side of things, where it's like a parallel universe anyway. I keep saying that, like people go there and like they start people believe in all sorts of things that they would never believe in if they were over here. It's a kind of setting where people are almost like afraid of their own shadows. Oh, someone's done this, or you see like some white powder on the floor. Oh, someone put it there so that or someone poured water on the floor so that I will suffer, I will be ill for the next 6 months, or whatever it is that people think. There are all these things that people, you know what I mean, things that they carry in their heads.
So the good side has never been shown, isn't it?
Yeah. So I kind of wonder that it's very sensationalistic. Well, making movies is a sensationalistic sort of medium anyway. And I guess for the African audiences, that sort of thing is what grabs them the most in terms of sensationalism. This thing about, who is trying to zap who's doing juju on who, and that kind of thing. And will they get their comeuppance? And if they do, how do they get it? And all of that,
So it's like the idea to be successful is always based around the powerful, juju or oracle that you are involved in. It's not about your effort and your determination to do well.
Well, as I say, I haven't watched many, so I don't know enough.
No, but you hear it all the time within like Nigeria, even politics and all that. You hear it. In order to be successful, you have to engage in these sort of act.
Yeah, but it's not only like from doing sort of sacrifices or ebo or whatever you want to call it. It's also from my pastor says this.
That's huge.
You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. It's almost like people are looking for some kind of parental sort of hand or figure to guide them along instead of taking personal responsibility for their own actions and direction and that sort of thing. Which is something that is to do with upbringing, and it comes from like a lot earlier in life, I think. That's where you kind of absorb that way of thinking. It's not something you can suddenly arrive at when you're 20 years old. It's because when you were 5 years old, you saw certain things that made you think that's the way the world is.
Absolutely. So Pilgrimage was released on the 27th of May, and you're going to do the online launch in this month, isn't it?
Yes.
On the 25th.
That's right.
How is that looking?
Well, I'm taking things like, step by step. There's quite several steps on the way to that. But on the 25th of June, which is a Saturday, there's going to be a launch for Pilgrimage on Twitter Spaces. And I'm going to have a special guest, and that's Professor Patika Ntuli, who is a sculptor and poet. Patika sent me a poem not so long ago and said, if you still like me, will you set it to music? And I said, well, okay, I will. So I did, and so part of what I aim to do is to perform that piece that Patika, based on his poem, in this launch, and have a listening party type engagement in the event, and have a conversation with him about pilgrimage and all these things that you and I are talking about now.
Right, yeah. That's fantastic. So, and it's available on Deezer and Google Music, Spotify, the Pilgrimage.
Yes, and on Bandcamp, my Bandcamp page. And well, what would be really good, if anyone that's interested, it would be lovely if you could follow me on Bandcamp, and if you could follow me on Spotify, that would be great.
Okay, yeah. Juwon Ogungbe, as in Juwon Ogungbe. Should we take another track from the EP? This one is entitled "The Elders in the Dome."
Right.
Mama, I thank you. You've made me feel at home. It is indeed an honor sitting with the elders in the dawn. I like to think there was a time when my grandpa sat here, though not a man of the cloth, he always hovered near. He yearned to learn the gospel, to receive the mission's gifts. Book learning promised power, access to alien myths. He would read the sacred tome, hear the elders in the dome. And now I'm here with you, a novice at your feet. I'm conscious of your precious time beyond the meet and the greet. I want to know the way it felt walking in my grandpa's shoes, hoping you will lead the way, sharing your enlightened views. We can read the sacred tome, hear the elders in the dome.
That's beautiful. The elders in the dome. This project, Sir Juwon, is there any way that is actually reached Abeokuta at the moment?
Well, it was only
His intention?
it was only released like on
Last
the
week.
27th of May.
Mhm.
So these are early days, but I am talking to people at present about at least getting it heard on radio in Nigeria. Whether it will get heard all over straight away, I don't know, because it's when you're beginning a sort of relationship with people, you want to kind of start, maybe test the waters and then see how it goes beyond that, and so in that way, yes, I'm hoping that. I think the landscape is very different now. Nowadays, you get lots of young people in Nigeria playing orchestral instruments. I mean, like that. When I was a young person, I mean, that wasn't the case at all. Hardly any of us were doing that kind of thing then. Now that you get people playing violins and cellos and all that sort of thing. I remember that once, like, a young person contacted me, 18 years old, based in Akure or somewhere like that. And he said, I play violin, and and I said, well, this is during lockdown, of course, and like I was like doing a project, and I said, well, why don't you join us, like, tune in and be part of this project, and you can like
How was that?
be involved in the group composition.
Yeah.
The problem was that he didn't have enough data.
Right.
So he couldn't sort of log on for long enough. For say an hour and a half or 2 hours long session, which was a pity. But what I'm saying that to say that people are getting more used to those sounds than they were certainly in the days that I lived in Nigeria.
Have you performed in Nigeria?
Well, the last time I performed in Nigeria, good God, was like 1999.
Oh, wow.
That was the last time I performed there.
Right. So it's something that you're looking forward to Pilgrim?
Well, I would like to. I mean, I'd like to, Africa generally, I'd like to perform, Of course, Nigeria, but, the thing is, like, there's a lot of insecurity, and I think I would want to do that sort of thing in a way that feels safe. And then maybe possibly go to other African countries too.
Is it a fact that your parents are no longer here that you feel, you feel in this way, like not actually safe, the confidence is very low to actually go back and, perform and establish yourself in Nigeria?
Well, I mean, there isn't as much
go see Babalawo and all that.
There isn't as much of a sort of incentive to go, like, since neither of my parents are around anymore. But having said that, if an opportunity presents itself that is really appealing, why not? I would go. I just think, there was a story, you're probably not familiar with all of this, but there was a story like of a fellow that was like, I think a gospel musician who was like gallivanting around with like his crew of musicians. And then they got stopped by herdsmen on this road, and they were like kidnapped, and they were like sort of led around, traipsing, walking for kilometers all over the bush for ages before the church people got enough money together to pay the ransom.
Oh, wow.
This kind of thing is it's par for the course, but he just happened to be a musician who was kind of well known in the gospel scene.
So that fear is filtered around, isn't it?
No, it's not just musicians; it's just general.
Yeah.
That there's kind of like insecurity. So like touring.
Yeah.
Is kind of an iffy kind of prospect.
It's interesting though, because a lot of musicians are looking forward to go to Nigeria to perform. Excited to do that.
Well, if I was going to go there, I'd probably just want to play
Lagos. I'll
just play Lagos. I'll just play Lagos and probably just leave it at that for now.
Yeah. Well, the next track I'm going to play is, I think is part of the EP, but this is is a single that you're going to be launching next week, actually, next week Friday. Yes. Your ancestors are with you.
Yes. And that's happening in the shrine, in the consultation, my imagined consultation with the Oracle.
At last. Well, I want to say thank you very much for coming, Sir Juwon. But for people to get in contact, I know the press is on the Feferity news page. All details are there, isn't it, to get in touch with you? Is there any other way?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter. That's at Juwon, which is JIMVON, an old nickname of mine. On Facebook, Juwon Ogungbe, I'm there. Instagram, I'm Oye Juwon, which is like the full version of my first name, OYEJUWON.
Okay.
Any of those places they're fine for friend requests and following and all that sort of thing. What would be great, as I said before, is especially on Spotify and on Bandcamp would be great if people would be interested to follow.
And part of this show as well, we'll put it on Spotify on our Feferity podcast, Feferityinspire.
Oh, that's cool. That's great.
Well, it's great to have you here as always, Juwon.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
And I wish you all the best in this coming project that you're doing, the pilgrimage.
Well, thank you very, very much, Freestyle. It's a pleasure. It's been a fantastic conversation, and I hope the listeners have found it engaging.
Absolutely. So here we are. Your ancestors are with you.
Am I foolish or brave? I've returned to this cave because I know deep inside where my ancestors reside. With humility in my heart, I'm willing to play my part. Would you please show me the light? Set me on the path that's right. Seconds tick away the time. Breaking through is worth the climb. I'm here waiting for your news and instructions you might choose. Speak, mighty oracle, I'm listening to you. Speak, mighty oracle, tell me what to do. Advising you on what to do in order to reach a breakthrough. Find your way to the bank of the river. Arrive at the crack of dawn. Take a leaf that ooze or the sweet aroma to burn in a small clay pot. Pay homage to ancestral spirits. Ask them for guidance and care. You are to do this on your own, for admission into their land. I hear you and will do as you say. I wish to thank you for joining me today. Your ancestors are with you.
Indeed. And this is the last piece from the EP, Pilgrimage, Caught You in the Act. Well, have yourself a blessed week. I hope you've enjoyed the show. And as I said, part of this will be clipped onto our podcast on Spotify, Feferityinspire, and also look out for our page that you can go back and listen to some of the shows that you've missed here on Mixcloud Feferity Radio. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you here tomorrow evening with Vinyl Saturday.
Mothers and fathers, are you hearing me? I greet you with a high regard and humility. Take me in your arms and teach me the best way to be at one with you forever and today. night. I hear noises I came here on my own. I've followed instructions to face you alone. Pagan, even a pagan, we've caught you in the act. Who are you? This is a taboo, pagan. Even a pagan, we will reveal this fact. Reveal the fact to who? To the church. Well, it's true, the right is mine to have advice. Leave me to make my sacrifice. Pagan, even a pagan, we've caught you in the act. If you're thinking of a blackmail, just know the ship won't sail. Pagan, even a pagan,